Belief. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the February 3rd regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory, upon which we gather with gratitude. Council, first up today, we have the consent agenda for the minutes of the council meeting held January 20th, 2025, and approval of the council meeting agenda. But I would like to add one item onto the agenda under notice of motion. There's a motion put through by Councillor Wood. You have copies on your desk if you'd like to have a look at that first, but I'd like to include that in today's agenda, if I may. Thank you. Do I have moved or seconded for the recommendations as noted? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Beale. Any errors, omissions, or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Our favorite part of the meeting, mine anyhow, and I'm sure yours as well. We have a very special presentation today. We have the fire chief regarding a presentation of Fire Service BC Long Service Medal. Regarding a presentation of the Fire Service BC Long Service Medal to Captain Mark Adelborg of the Parksville Volunteer Fire Department. This medal is awarded to those who have at least 25 years of paid or volunteer fire service in a community structure fire department as a structure firefighter to recognize their dedicated and long service. So I would ask Chief Norris to approach, if you may, sir. Thank you very much, and welcome to all of the fire and search and rescue team that we have present and your families. I'm glad you're here to mark this very momentous occasion. Well deserved. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to be here today, and I thank Council for allowing us to make this presentation. Today, we're going to be presenting a 25-year fire long service medal in the BC Fire Service. If I could ask the Mayor to come to the front and Captain Adelborg to come up front also. You get to stand in the middle. Today we have one member being recognized for the long service in the BC Fire Service, and the majority of that with Parksville Fire Rescue. Captain Mark Adelborg has been a member of the Parksville Fire Rescue Department since December 4th, 2000. However, he got his start in the fire service just up the road in Coombs Hilliers Volunteer Fire Department in July of 1997. Mark served in Coombs Hilliers through to March of 1999 when he made the excellent decision to move to the city of Parksville. And Mark resumed his fire service career with us in the fall of 2000. Mark is one of our senior company officers, and his dedication in particular to training our members is a credit to our department and to our community. We are truly lucky to benefit from his membership. So at this time, it's my pleasure, along with Mayor O'Brien, to present to Captain Adelborg the 25-year BC Fire Service Long Service Medal on behalf of the Fire Commissioner of BC.
Year, the British Columbia Long Service Award, Mark Adelborg, in recognition of 25 years of dedication to the fire service. We're proud of you, Mark, and thank you very much for your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Me too. Took our toque off. Thank you for coming. Council, moving on, for the first report on the agenda is from the Manager of Communications regarding the Parksville Community Park Mobile Food Services to request council approval to conduct a one-year pilot project for the delivery of mobile food services in the Parksville Community Park. Ms. Tardif, we doing a presentation today? Lovely to see you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. I have just a few slides here, and the intent is really just to answer any questions you might have about the report and the recommendations. I thought it might be important to just point out that in 2015, when the city first issued the RFP, the food truck pads had been built. An RFP was issued at that time, hoping to get an operator for each of the pads. That didn't happen, and fortunately, the chamber responded, and then through an agreement with the city, operated pretty much through till 2024, except for I think some broken time during COVID. So I thought these numbers might be interesting. It's really hard, obviously, to gauge exactly how many people we have on a day-to-day basis in the community park, but we know it's a lot. And on some days, you know, it could be 6,000, 8,000 people a day, easy. There were 534 bookings last year. To date, we have 456. And we still don't have, it's early, so we still don't have a lot of the smaller events booked. The larger ones are like the outdoor theater, beach festival, the beer festival. Some of those big events are booked and in place, volleyball as well. So again, it's really hard to tell just how many people we have in the community park on a daily basis. So the rates that we're proposing for this year are pretty basic. The intent is that the rental rates will offset electric, the utilities for the food truck pads. And then there will be some additional costs because there'll be an enhanced level of waste disposal because the chamber did that last year. And hopefully the costs will cover some admin costs. So the revenue is really anticipated to be about the same as last year. We do anticipate an additional revenue when we bring in that third food truck or cart that will go somewhere else in the park. It may go in the gathering plaza. We'll have a better idea of gauging the number of people in the park on a daily basis and be able to adjust. And we obviously will know the busiest days because those are the events that are booked. So we've done some work on the documents that will be required, things like application form, expressions of interest, terms and conditions, to really get a sense of how we would manage this. So those are just to give you a sense of what we will be requiring of the mobile food concession vendors. And I think those are actually in the report as well. Should council agree with this pilot project, that is what we see as the timeline. We would work this week to get the information out, look at a date to close March 3rd, and then do what I think is a fairly quick turnaround, review the applications, look at a schedule. And then by April 16th, we would need things like the damage deposit, certificate of insurance, naming the city, those things. And that's just a couple of pretty pictures. Are there any questions?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Deb. I just a quick question when I was looking at the proposed rate schedules and so forth. In the past, we've had somewhat hit and miss some requests for off-season, for like someone to just provide like a coffee truck, like a coffee cart or something like that, but it would be on a weather permitted basis. And so they just wanted the opportunity to, if it's a sunny day in November, a sunny weekend or something like that, they wanted the opportunity to just provide like a short service, a coffee service, that type of thing. Have we had any applicants for that, or is there any provision if an applicant comes to us that we can accommodate that? Because there are some, we do have some pretty good weather occasionally, and not looking outside today, but in the past anyways, we've had some pretty incredible November, Decembers and so forth, like weekends, and the park is very busy because when the sunshine comes out, so do the people. And it was just the opportunity we had. It was as a, in the past, it was just for an on as is basis for someone to just show up and operate it, and not for any specific length of time. I was just wondering if we've had any expressions of interest from anyone in that regard, and if so, are we prepared to accommodate them with whatever rate that might look like?
If I may, at this point, we've had no requests. This expression of interest, this request is for May 1st to September 30th.
Right.
But absolutely something we could and perhaps should look at. One of the things that I'm suggesting as part of this May 1st to September 30th is offering that first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks with no charge to the food truck providers as an incentive, because those are obviously weather dependent. And so I'm hoping it'll be a bit of an incentive if the vendors actually book, some good solid times, then that I see that as a bit of a bonus, those two. So maybe could be extended outside of those dates.
Right. And that's a great idea. And I really like the idea of 2 weeks ahead of season, 2 weeks after the end of the season, to offer it on a no charge basis, because it is kind of hit and miss as to whether at that point. But that's a great idea. It's an incentive anyways to let them, get their, especially at the start of the season, get their feet wet,
Yes.
before the season and work out all the little bugs. Great idea. I'm fully supportive of that, Deb. Thank you. Question from Councillor Wood. Go ahead, sir.
It's just a comment. I should have a question, but I don't. Through yourself, Mayor. Thank you so much, Deb, for putting this together. And what I like about it is that it's a pilot program, and I think we'll probably learn a little bit from it. We'll hear back from the vendors. We'll see if the price on the pads is going to work for us. Maybe we'll learn a little bit more about timing and shoulder season and all that. And that's the part I like about it. Thanks.
And okay. Councillor Grens, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Director of Communications. Thank you, staff, for the willingness to take this on as a responsibility. There are a few options on the staff report around how to handle food trucks in the coming year, and I'm definitely in support of trying out a pilot. I guess the question, though, is around risk, and previously some of the risk would have been borne by an outside operator on profitability, so to speak, on this. There's basically was essentially a guaranteed revenue from the food truck pads previously. Is that sound accurate? Am I? Yeah. Okay. So, and that revenue would be higher than the expenses of electricity and, or at least not lower than that?
If I may, yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my only thing about the pilot, is to make sure that we don't somehow end up in a level of service that we didn't necessarily decide on. So that's where the pilot is helpful, but I'd be very curious to see what the numbers are like as after this, to make sure that it's not something that would be sort of subsidized by taxpayers versus putting it out for tender where someone else, an outside operator, would be taking on the risk of maybe not making money on it. And also they would be incentivized as well to maximize the use of the pads in order to ensure that they don't lose money, right? So that would be my only concern around that. I think I have another question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Does staff feel confident to be able to respond to any kind of as needed things that may come up from having full control over the food truck pads, in that maybe if there's some kind of problem down in the park with the pads or anything like that? I don't know how it went before, but did staff action that, or would that have been done by the whoever held that, or the chamber in this case? Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, yes, we are prepared to monitor it. And I'm not sure exactly at this point how that will be done. Those are some of the things that, based on council's decision today, we will need to work out. But I'm hopefully not overly optimistic that we will get a good response from the food trucks and be able to get a really good variety and be able to manage that 11 till 7 p.m. a little better without maybe the same challenges as we've had in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Tardif, for the presentation. My question is about the third-party management of the mobile food services, the RFP. You mentioned that if we delay it, if we kind of look for a third party, it might delay the provision. When did we find out that Chamber will no longer be pursuing this as a service? And did we seek kind of expression of interest if PDBA or other parties were interested, rather than making it like a city should do it? If we don't do it, it will going to delay the provisions. Did we look at other options?
If I may,
Go ahead.
no, this is the option that staff is putting forward, is to do a pilot project for a year, and the city would manage, coordinate, schedule the service. It's my understanding that the chamber is not interested in doing it again this year, that if we put an RFP out, they would not respond. But I did not approach the PDBA about managing it.
Thank you. Councillor Franz.
Thank you, through the mayor's staff. Part of my concern on this is that we were constantly hearing about staff workload being ran to the max. And now if we're going to take on managing day-to-day renting out of the pad, that seems like it'd be quite a lot of workload that we'd be taking on. This isn't versus putting out for RFP where we get someone to take on the contract and it's one and done. So the staff workload is a concern for me, as well as we don't have a guarantee of commitment of having all the time slots filled like we did when we put it out for RFP before they were under contract and obligation to be at the park. So how would we manage if there's times when they have other events going on, caterings and food trucks just aren't available and they don't respond to it, then we're without service in the park as well. The other thing I saw as an opportunity, though, is for, if the chamber isn't interested in taking it on, is for the food trucks themselves to form their own group to be able to manage amongst themselves, and then be able to delegate of like when they would want it and so on, but without having the chamber being someone that charged the rent. I'm not sure what they were charging them previously though too,
No.
but I think there was some interest amongst them that I just heard in the background that that they would perhaps want to take it on themselves. So I think if we were making a decision on this now, we'd take away that opportunity for them to be able to even respond. my suggestion or my thought would be that we would put out the RFP as we had before, but bring an option like this forward at the same time, and we can decide, do we hand out the contract, or then do we go with the pilot project route? Because right now we're only seeing this option without knowing what we're missing. And I think it would be great if they were able to manage it amongst themselves. So that's where kind of my risk and benefit on this. I'm not sure I see an added benefit doing this pilot project aside from taking on more workload without any guarantee that we're going to get anything more out of it. As far as the revenue goes out of it too, this isn't something I look at to be a revenue generator for the city. This is more of a service that I want to be provided in the park. And so I would love to see our rates be as low as possible to incentivize them with, not that we want to lose any money, but I don't look at it as something that an area that I want to, generate revenue for ourselves on. So those are my kind of thoughts on it. And if you want to respond, that's great.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll comment as well, Deb, on that, but you can take it first.
Would not have suggested this is a pilot project if I wasn't 100% confident that staff could handle the scheduling. It would fall to the special events coordinator, and again, hoping not to be overly optimistic, but really believe that we should be able to schedule a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. And again, it's really to try. We had some challenges last year with the service that was provided, and which is the reason as staff, we've brought forward this suggestion. The possibility of doing an RFP and then having this as an alternative if no one responds to an actual request for proposals to manage the service is for sure an option.
Yes, and thank you. And further to that, Councillor Frass, I know that this is the food trucks concessions it's in a period of transition. And as Deb had mentioned anyways, there were serious challenges where our events coordinator actually stepped in and managed a lot of those challenges that happened last year. And so they are very aware of the scope and the amount of work required to do it. And they're down at the park regularly managing in the past. So as far as the workload goes, they're aware of what the workload is. And before we came up with this idea, we said, to make sure that it didn't encumber anybody, but they say no, that they can handle it. And in this case, it needs to be managed perhaps more efficiently than it was in the last year or two. And so that's what we're looking for here. So it is a transitionary, but if someone in the meantime comes up with a proposal, like as an organizer, to do something, then I would hope that they would respond at the RFP anyways to say, oh, by the way, I think it's a good suggestion that we include that as part of the RFP if to move on. But at this particular time, we're at the time where we have to be organizing, we're February already. And so that's why the rates have to be published and so forth. So those individuals that are considering offering a food truck service in Parksville, they have the facts and figures up front at this point, because this is when they're building their business right now. So at this time, I think it's a transition period. I think it's wise to do it at this particular time. Nobody stepped up in the meantime, like in between last season and now, to say that, oh, by the way, we know that you had challenges with the food trucks, so the food trucks operators themselves recognize that. No one has stepped up and said, I'd like to take over managing them for you. That hasn't come to us. We've heard that could happen, but nobody has come forth to us. But I think if someone does come forth, I said absolutely that we should have a good look at that. But as I say, it's timing. Timing's all. We have to have this thing in place quickly to accommodate our spring summer season coming up right away. But good comments are true, and maybe it's going to transition to something totally different. But we had to make sure that we had it because by not having food trucks in the park organized properly, we heard a lot about it in the past, anyways, from the public and from the food truck vendors themselves. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a guaranteed product this time, better managed and run anyways. It's going to be to the benefit of both cases. And I can assure you that the intent of the rates are not to be as a money making. It's to basically cover the services as such that it comes with operating the food trucks in the park. There's an awful lot, whether it's the garbage and the pickup and the power washing and the cleaning and so forth, as well as the services provided, as Councillor Grens has pointed out. We provide utilities to those sites that we put in there anyways, and it's a great location, but it's also well serviced. So that's part of it. And our intent is to be, to keep it as low as possible, believe me, so that the vendors and actually can, they can turn a profit at the end of it and make it worthwhile for them. Absolutely. Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
I don't think Councillor Gore's asked, have you? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Deb, for this great project. The way I looked at it was that if we have this, and this it's been discussed today, if we have a pilot project, then maybe there will be an RFP, an organization that would come up run it next year, but we don't know until we have a successful program. That's the way I've looked at it. I have one question for you. How do you decide who's, do they have to come forward? Do we have a variety of different kinds of food trucks so we don't have the same ones? So there's a variety on different days, is that how it works, or? Yeah.
If I may, Mayor, one of the challenges last year is we heard that on many days, on quite a few days, there was just ice cream and donuts. So someone who was going down looking for dinner, it wasn't there. So our plan is to make sure that we are able to schedule both so that there's a variety for people. Towards the end of last year, there was very limited food services in the community park, and we did hear complaints.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's it.
You good?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Ms. Tarda, for the presentation. I certainly want to support this. There are a number of brief comments I would like to make. I appreciate that it is a pilot project and that a lot of information can be gathered. Also regarding the actual cost to the city for looking after those spaces. I appreciate that someone else was saying, our mayor was mentioning that we don't really, it's not a money making for the city, but we certainly don't want to be operating at a loss and we want to be providing a service. I also would like to recognize that you yourself and our events coordinator did a fantastic job last year with Canada Day and booking all those food trucks. And I imagine that there have been other events similar to that. Which should reassure all of us that the food trucks and the city have had and will continue to have direct communication, so that there is already a relationship between the city and food trucks. And I think that goes a long way to making this a success. I do understand that this past year there were some challenges. I also think it's also very possible, and I want us to keep an open mind, that perhaps it was a bit of an anomaly. And so again, I appreciate that it is a pilot project. And finally, although the summer might feel like it's far away, especially with the snowy weather that we have today. I got to get my winter boots on. For people who are planning and work and have their business operating in the summer, it is not far away, and those things need to be set in motion, and the kind of shifting scheduling that needs to go on. And finally, I would like to say that even in previous years, and particularly perhaps this last year, although the city did not coordinate this directly, there is no doubt in my mind that it still took noticeable staff time to have this going on in the park. So I appreciate that staff has the capacity. And again, like I say, I know that there was quite a bit of communication at the very least and monitoring of our food trucks over the past year by city staff. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gore.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to council. This to me is again looking at the core functions of the city and the council. Like to me, it's good for us to be managing the food trucks because things fell sideways. Last year, whatever happened, we took on Canada Day. Again, this is not Chamber was running it previously. So yes, we have a special events coordinator, but to have all this workload taken up by the staff, I'm personally not in favor of that. I would still like to see RFP go out to see what kind of interest there is and also get an opinion also, honestly, from PDBA, from the chamber and the food trucks folks, what they think would be an option. Again, it's not our core function, but city taking it on, I'm really reluctant to support something like this. I really want to see an RFP out first, and then it could be a last measure that we take it on because we could not find anybody else. Those are my thoughts rather than just jumping onto this as option one. I could even make it more palatable. I don't know if we can amend the options and have perhaps the city look at managing the food trucks for the special events only, and the RFP for the daily use could be an option. Some flexibility. I just reluctant to put it on staff. So it's more of this function. Thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Through yourself, Deb, is there a chance that this, should it gain council support, would be less work for staff than it was even last year when someone else was in kind of managing the food trucks down there?
I don't know. Yeah. It's really hard to say. I think we will have a more consistent, efficient service.
I can comment that last year was reactionary instead of proactive. And that was this big situation. So the reactionary response was damaging to our reputation, as well as to the food trucks and as well as to our staff, because it's like you're responding to a fire instead of preventing that fire from happening. So and that's what possibly a more managed response, I think, is what we're seeing being presented right today, and that I think is necessary, that we have a managed response that we are aware of, that we know we can control. This time, after having gone through what we did it was actually the last 2 years. So the question is good, but I think that it's once the provisions are made in place, type of thing. You have the schedule, you have the proponents and so forth. Everybody understands what the responsibilities are, and it should flow because it's proper contracts and there's no misunderstandings. And I think there's a lot of misunderstandings last year as to possible responsibilities. I can assure you, with our events coordinated, it's very clear, what's expected and so forth, and upfront, and part of that is upfront here in February what the rates are going to be, before you consider, well, am I going to operate my food truck business in Nanaimo or in Parksville? You're going to know that right now, so they'll be able to make those decisions because they have to book into those. So I think that this is a better managed situation, and it's, as we say, it's a pilot. And then let's take that and learn from it. And then if we feel that, hey, this was a lot of work, and maybe that or somebody in the meantime comes up after the end of this year and says, I think we can do that, then the council will have the opportunity to look at that particular option. But I'm just not prepared to take a chance that we let things fall aside for this year, because we're already behind the 8 ball, because this really should have been done by December 31. So that's what our obligations are, I believe. But Good question. Councillor Beal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with all those comments you've just made. I would like to add that, a number of people have mentioned that the Chamber in the past has done this, et cetera. As a liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, I'm not going to speak for them directly, but I did reach out to the executive there, and I was reassured that the Chamber is not choosing to make a request to look after food trucks for this season. So I just want to make that clear. I got that information just over the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is kind of going off. We haven't really I'm going to go back to questions or comments to Ms. Tardif here, and then we can put it on the table and we can have okay. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Frass.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate to council through mayor here that I don't see any reason why we wouldn't put out an RFP at this time, because the time sensitivity of doing a pilot project, we don't have anything we're gaining by approving a pilot project now or doing it later. Either way, we would have to be getting the word out there to the food trucks if we were going to take on the pilot project, reach out to them individually and then try to book it, or putting out an RFP. We're needing to communicate with them and seeing if they're wanting to either take on the management or take on a lease for the space. It's not that they have to manage all the spots for the entire summer. There could be a food truck operator that wants to lease the space for the entire time as well. That might suit those needs. So I don't see the pressure for having to approve a pilot project right now ahead of putting out an RFP out there. As far as us being behind the eight ball, we're working on our timeline. There's nothing that held us back from putting an RFP sooner or bringing ideas before sooner. So I don't see why we wouldn't put out the RFP and then make the decision on which direction we're going to go once we see if there's an interest, or if there isn't an interest, if we are going to have to manage it ourselves. So I'm not in favor of just taking on this pilot project and approving it today, but I support the put out an RFP and then we can look at our options.
My problem with having that instead of putting out for an RFP is the fact that the proponent to manage the entire process itself would then have to look at those numbers. Those numbers are put together by the city for what the rates are based on what we feel is necessary to clear our utilities and so forth. And the operator would have to take those numbers and add on his management fees onto it, of course, because he's not necessarily going to be happy with that. If that's what the city's expecting the rent rate to be, then he's going to have to put his markup on it. So with that process, then is going to make the manager have to increase the rates that are up there right now. So you're making it so it's going to be more expensive then for the food trucks because the manager's not going to do it for free. Would you not? Am I missing something here? I'm not sure, Councillor Franz.
When we first brought out these food truck pads, we put them out for lease for the individual pads, and one food truck could respond. And in fact, we had when RFPs came back, there was proposals that came back where it was just one vendor saying we'll rent the whole space for the whole time. If memory serves you correct, we went with management of the whole property because there was then the variety that was going to come with that and the flexibility of it. So they could do catering events, and amongst them they could then, when there's special events going on, it was amongst them to decide how it was happening. But initially there were pad rentals, and whether it was month by month or whether it was for an entire season or so on, it's not that this has to be a management proposal for the whole thing. It's kind of morphed into that because that's what's taken place previously. But that's not that we have to carry on like that type of thing. We could lease out the pads. And so that's what I'm suggesting. And I think if without the chamber being there now, if they're not going to have interest, it opens the doors for the food trucks then to decide if they want to do a management group themselves to have that flexibility and because it's a prime location for them. Or if there's, Extreme Eatery, they've been massive with their food trucks and their businesses lately and so on. Maybe they want to take on a place like that as an example. So I think opening up to and hearing back from them and knowing that they can kind of clear their own path now, I think it provides a lot of opportunity. So that's what I'm suggesting we take the chance to do, and then we can make the decision on it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is that maybe, Deb, is there any reason that we couldn't in the RFP come up with a proposal anyways for when you're going to be going out to the food trucks regardless, it's going to come up with a proposal and say, or managing the entire system, managing the entire proposal. Is there a group of food trucks that are going to amalgamate and say, we feel that we can do this and still achieve what we as a city expect from the service level in the park?
If I may, I am not aware of a group that would be interested in doing that. I think if the wish is to issue an RFP, then I think what would make sense, and I would defer to Kiva or Amanda, is to revert back to the RFP that we have issued in the past, which is for the management of the space. And then it would be open to anyone to apply.
Councillor Wood.
Thanks, Mayor. To me, when I look at this, it kind of looks like wholesale pricing. This is the lowest that the city can do if we're going to manage the garbage and recycling as well. And having someone else apply for, to lease or rent these pads should also include the management of the garbage and recycling as well, which is what the chamber was doing. And so to me, it looks like there would be kind of two different pricing schemes. Right now, we are offering to manage all of that. And this is like the cheapest that you can get each pad. And we're going to manage the recycling and garbage. And so if we were going to put out an RFP for someone else to do all that management, that's a different pricing scheme than this. Unless we were going to also manage the garbage and recycling, and then someone else can just use this as wholesale pricing. And then to your point, they'd be adding margin onto that so that they can add a little bit of management fee. So I like Councillor Fraz's idea, but I think it would be kind of two different RFPs. One, it would be managed with or without garbage and recycling, and one not including that. That's just kind of how I'm looking at it. Thanks.
I see our CAO has come online now. CAO Kaler, can you comment at this point, please?
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, thanks. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. I think one of the things that I sort of favored this approach, where a lot of councillors have touched on it, is we do spend a fair amount of time anyway. And so if we can be proactive and spend the time up front, the obligations for those who are selected are that they must follow the rules about being there when required and when they're booked. And we can look at, we had talked about enforcement options, or, whether or not it's fining the person or they have to pay a portion of the fee regardless of whether they show up or not. I think there's a few things we can do there. One of the concerns I guess I would have around doing an RFP, I think Councillor Wood just touched on this, we'd almost have to do two options, I suppose, in the RFP. Of one would be an individual bid for days or weeks or months or something like that for a pad, and the other would be for someone or corporation or a group to manage it. So I think it might be confusing to folks, what they're responding to. We certainly would have to almost then manage kind of three potential ways of this working out. And so one suggestion that I might put before council is if we went ahead with staff doing the pilot this year, but we're open to all of those suggestions that councillors have made for next year, because we would normally want to start planning this in about November. So if throughout the season, the trucks that we work with, we can chat with them informally and ask, like, would this be feasible? Is this something you can handle, for a group of you to kind of manage it? But meanwhile, we're not delaying or having people try to put together something for this season, like guessing kind of what the rates should be, or guessing whether they should do recycling or those types of things. It would just be for the one season, I guess. And that way we have a bit more time to, I guess, informally reach out and see if there is someone that kind of rises to the challenge of taking it over from us. And we can then also report out on our actual costs and what the minimum rent from the city's perspective is going to have to be to make sure we're not providing assistance to business and that we're offsetting our costs. If we were to issue an RFP, we'd be back. Normally, it would take us a bit of time to put it together, week or so, and then we usually put them out for 30 days. And I think, again, we'd have to make sure this one covered an individual person. And then we would have to maybe put some limits around, like, are we going to let someone bid for individual days, or is it for a week at a time or a month at a time? And then how do we balance selecting that? So it's a little bit more work, I think, could be a little bit more work, just depending on what we get back. So that would be my thought, is just for this year, if we can proactively get ahead of it, but have perhaps even questions from counselors that we can put to the vendors throughout the season. That way we can bring a report back to you in September, October, and be ready to, if we are going to be doing an RFP, we could start putting that together in November, ready to go in January.
Thank you, CAO Kaler. I think that's, yeah, I really like that idea anyways. So I'm going to thank you, Deb, for your presentation. I'm going to ask for a mover or seconder for the recommendation. As noted, moved by Councillor Grimes, seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? Councillor Grimes, you're first at the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, I fully am sympathetic to the concerns around that have been raised around this table. But I think given the time situation, it makes sense to have staff do this as a pilot. But when they come back next year, I'm probably not that likely to support the staff continuing to do it. But I do see that there's opportunity for potential economies of scale as staff is moving into the same year. Part of the work plan is to look at our booking processes and all that. So I can see there might be opportunity to get some additional economies of scale for the staff doing it this year, getting things in position, and then next year putting it back to council to look at RFP. End of the day, I'm just actually kind of sad that it didn't work out for the chamber. And so maybe next year it could go back to them. Who knows? But at least we've got this year where staff has jumped to the pump to take care of this and make sure that we do have food trucks in the community park and that we do have a predictable schedule. And then we have all those things that we really want to see in the community park around food trucks. So that's why I'm moving that option.
Thank you. Councillor Wood, comment? You're seconded? No, thank you. Yes, okay. Any other comments? Put up your hand so I can take an order. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, kind of touching on what Councillor Grenz just mentioned, I want to ask our CAO. I think I tried to ask that to Ms. Tardif. When did we know with with chamber will not be able to continue this, and why? To me, I feel like it's last minute given to council. Like, this is your only option, that we take this on as a pilot, or this season we will be, not having food trucks in the park. So if we already knew this about chamber not being able to continue this service, should this not have come to the council prior to this, so we were not constrained by one option only? Thank you.
Thank you. If I can-
CEO Kaler, go ahead.
So council made the decision in a closed meeting on this, so I can't really get into too much detail. So I'll just leave it at that.
We did it in closed. That the chamber wasn't going to. Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reiterate that that this will give us an opportunity to make sure that the future will be good for the food trucks, and it'll be a pilot project. And that's it. And then we will have the RFP come maybe next year.
Right.
I want to reiterate that, and I do support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'm in favor of this as a pilot project for this year. I think we have to do it. Our staff have put a lot of work into this, and I feel it's moving forward. And then after that, we get a report in September, October as an evaluation, and then we can look at it moving forward. So all those in favor? All those opposed? That was opposed by Councillor Gore and Councillor Fraz. Thank you all. That carries. Thank you. The next report on the agenda is from the corporate officer regarding the annual reporting of closed meetings. To disclosure of the business conducted in closed council meetings. Do we have a presentation, or is it just as noted? Thank you. I'll wait for the gallery to get out to do their snow shoveling. Thank you, Council. You have the information regarding the annual reporting on closed meetings in your information package. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations as noted? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Beal. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you, Council. The next report on the agenda is the Manager of Administration Services has included in your packages a 2025 Chamber of Commerce Fee for Service Agreement to renew the Chamber of Commerce Fee for Service Agreement. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Gore, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any comments? All those in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimous. Thank you. Final adoption for the bylaw of the Water Service System Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 1320.34. Amendments to water conservation levels as for your information package. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Gore, seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? Councillor Grant, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Just a couple items here, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I guess maybe in the communications, it's just a reminder that we want to make sure that we're communicating out the rationale behind water conservation levels. I know it's not part of the actual bylaw, but I just want to put that out there that we should make sure we remind the public around water conservation and the importance of that, and how protecting the environmental habitat requirements are the key reason behind the conservation levels. Secondly, I guess want to confirm with staff that there will be updates to things like truck decals, which currently say water restrictions on them. And if we're changing the terminology, that maybe we need to update those trucks. I'm sure staff's on top of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I'll ask Manager Communications, Ms. Tardif, to comment further on what that looks like. Thank you.
If I may, Mayor, yes, there's a whole list of updates, website. Let's Talk Parksville. We'll mail with utility notices in March. So once approved today, then we scramble to get the materials done. And a whole education program around not only the changes that come into effect with this new bylaw, but how people can just do better at conserving. So yeah, there is a whole comm strategy around making this work.
And I have to say, and it's in coordination with our neighbors, with the RDN and the town of Qualicum Beach and so forth. We're all on the same page now, because everybody feels that we live in Oceanside, or a lot of people by the mailing address feels they live in Parksville. But so this is where we're coming to common ground here, so that we can all work on that conservation message that is so important in these times. Yes, thank you, Councillor Grant.
Thank you. And
Go
just
ahead.
one other item, which was housekeeping, which I'm sure is on top of the staff's on top of, but the readings are dated for January 20th, which I assume will be updated for February 3rd.
Story, I missed the point. The readings.
Yeah, the
themselves?
bylaw amendment in the agenda package says the readings were done January 20th, and I assume that'll be updated to today's date if we're doing the readings today. Final today. Oh, did we do the reading on the 20th on this already? Oh, okay. Well, then all my other comments I should have made on the 20th.
Oh, you made enough. That was okay. I watched the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Grant. Any further comments on what's on the floor here? Thank you. Seeing none. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimous. Bylaws for final adoption. The Plan Parksville Amendment Bylaw 2024, number 1492.8. For the map amendment to multi-unit residential and DP area extent adjustment for 1225 Franklin Gull Road. I have a mover second for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Gore, second by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? All those in favor? Sorry, Councillor Grants, is your finger up or your, okay, thank you. I'm going to call that again. All those in favor? Thank you. That is unanimous. Bylaws for final adoption for the zoning and development amendment bylaw 2024 number 2000.151. Text amendment to comprehensive development CD 36 at 1225 Franklin Gull Road. Do I have a mover or seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimous. Sorry. Comfort break. I'd like to call a comfort break at this time. We're almost done. Can you wait until we split into in camera? Okay. So, okay, I'm going to call for a 5-minute comfort break. It's 1:55. Let's reconvene at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you, council, for your indulgence. We will reconvene the meeting now at 2:03. Thank you so much. We have 3 notices of motion on the agenda. We have from Councillor Wood, a submission of Sustainable Growing Communities Fund Resolution to the Association of Vancouver and Coastal Communities Annual Convention. I'm going to request that Councillor Wood read out his, if you can do it abbreviated, I know. Yeah, if you could. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to paraphrase because this is kind of long and boring. The idea is that the province is offloading a lot of responsibilities. We see increasing population, and really our only way of paying for things is a regressive means using property taxes. And what it actually asks for is the province to distribute $1 billion a year as a line item on their side of things to local governments, so that we have another way besides property taxes to pay for all the responsibilities and infrastructure that we find ourselves paying for. It is in line with what UBCM is asking the province. It's in line with what FCM is asking the federal government. And so ideally, council passes this, it goes to AVICC. Ideally, it's in the endorsed block, it goes to UBCM. Ideally, it's in the endorsed block at UBCM. And then hopefully we hear from the province, yes or no, or we'll think about it. Thank you.
And if you could confirm when the next AVICC meeting is?
Mayor, that's a great question. It's going to be this spring. I believe it's in Nanaimo or Victoria. Nanaimo
it's
this
in
year.
Nanaimo, yeah. But I believe it's in April, end of April, beginning of May, is it not? Okay.
April 10th. There we go from Councillor Gore. Thank you.
That's just for all those know that if it is endorsed by the city of Parksville, it will be at the next meeting. Thank you. At the AVICC. Seconded by Councillor Gore. Is there any discussion by council? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason I chose $1 billion is because we know what that $1 billion looks like at the local government level from kind of the one-time grant that was given to us during our first year of this term. And they can decide how they want us to spend it. They can put some strings on it depending on their responsibilities and their priorities. But that's where I came up with that number, is because local governments have an idea of what that would look like on our own budgets. And so that's why I came up with the $1 billion. Thank you.
Thank you. Comment, Councillor Gord, did you comment a seconder?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I think when the city received the 4.6 million approximate monies from the province, at that time we had discussion that it's a one-time 4.6 million, and thank you for all the growth that you need, and go play with it, do whatever you need to do. At that time, it was realized 4.6 million is like a drop in the bucket for the things that we need. We have actually a bucket list for now we are seeing from our master plans, our sewer upgrades and the water, not to mention the policing cost that's going to escalate. So all these runaway costs, one time 4.6 million, we knew at the time is not sufficient. I was wondering if Councillor Wood had any more input into what sort of figures UBCM or at FCM levels they're talking about. And you mentioned the 1 billion. It's very ambitious. I hope they can come up with that money. But we know the province with a deficit of what, $8-9 billion. I don't know if it's something practical they'll be able to do that. But I was hoping if Councillor Wood would be more looking into something like matching the funds from what we get from the feds in the Canada Building Fund. So if we can request the province, if the province could actually match those funds that we get annually, or what we call the gas tax, so have those matching funds come to us on an annual basis, would that be more palatable, let's say, for the provincial ministers and leaders? What sort of figures are you hearing from at the FCM or the UBCM level? Thank you.
And through myself, Councillor Wood, go ahead and answer the question.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. From my understanding, there isn't real numbers from FCM. They want a better framework for local governments across the whole country to pay for things. Matching the Building Communities, Canadian Communities Travel Fund or whatever it is, CCB or whatever it is, that may not be the best way just because it's a contract. The new federal government they have a way out of that contract. And so I'd rather not tie it to that. I'd rather just, ask the province, as the number is large at $1 billion, but I'd rather just ask them something simple and not attach it to any metrics, inflation or anything, and at least get the conversation started with that. This isn't necessarily tied to anything that UBCM or FCM is asking for. I just wanted to get it in the endorsed blocks and then kind of get the conversation started. It's ongoing, actually. This is just another kind of way to keep the conversation going. Thanks.
It's a good starting point. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to thank Councillor Wood for bringing forth this motion. I certainly want to support it. And I'd also like to add that when we did receive that money from the provincial government in the first year of our term, it was, of course, very welcome. But what I also really appreciated is that this is money that, had it stayed with the provincial government level, may also have in some way or another trickle down or come to us for this and that and the other that we applied for. I really appreciated this money coming out to the municipalities so that we could in fact choose what was the best thing for this to be spent on at this particular time, and also looking ahead. There were and there are some strings attached, but I also, if I recall correctly, the reporting out and accountability was perhaps not as onerous as is sometimes the case with grants that we receive. So for all of those reasons, I really appreciate it. Probably looks good for the provincial government, but municipalities can be quite unique. We're very different from Quesnel or, far north, Fort St. John, and, Caslow. And so the needs are going to be different. And why not just move that money out to communities, particularly communities that are growing, as is ours and a number of others, so that we can decide where best to put the money. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Grans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that you've very much wanted me to weigh in on this one and have a lot of things to say, so I thought I'd ramble on for a lot.
Looking forward to it. I do have the microphone control switch handy.
Oh, there's a kill switch. Okay.
I couldn't do it when I was away.
I'll keep my comments brief. I appreciate the headline grabbing number of $1 billion and the connection back to the Growing Communities Fund that we saw at the beginning of our term. The provincial government has been eroding the homeowners grant now by not raising it, which helps homeowners pay for their property taxes. And so that's less money going to homeowners. Meanwhile, they're asking homeowners to pay more for services that they are asking municipalities to do. And so it's kind of a tricky way of making municipalities raise taxes almost on behalf of the provincial government. This motion puts the onus back on the province and says, if you want to make sure we're doing these things that you want us to do, then you raise taxes and do it in a way that's more progressive, that's more equitable. Because when we do it, it's not the most progressive or equitable way to ask people to pay for the services that the province wants us to help support. So for those reasons, I'm happy to support this, and anything we can do to ensure that the province is working together with municipalities on behalf of all our shared communities, I'm in support of.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Councillor Wood to bring this forward to us at this time, because it is time sensitive. We have to make a point of supporting it, and we want it there for AVICC. But thank you very much, Councillor Wood. I'll be supporting it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further comments, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you, council. We have the next notice of motion by Councillor Martin regarding submission of a mental health resolutions to Association of Vancouver and Coastal Communities Annual Convention. Once again, being presented to AVICC in this spring. And so, Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to this and maybe summarize your motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will summarize it. I just want to make a preamble here and the importance of it because it is important. And I'd like to also thank CAO Kaler for helping me with this because it's in the weeds. It's very difficult to put it across in hopefully concise manner. Also, since I've put this forward a week or so ago before, you know, the meeting was put together here today, BYLAWS graduate was in, contacted us actually through a letter, and I had a chat with her. She's 20 years old, BYLAWS graduate, and she has had some challenges in this area, not just herself, but her community. And her close friend was the one young man who passed away in Rathterra last year. I didn't know this when I started to talk to her, and this is to do with mental illness for sure. And this is why one of the reasons why I'm bringing forward this motion. Also, my late mother, who was born and raised here, and she would be 102 today at this year, her focus in her career as a counselor, a world-renowned counselor, psychologist, was on the family and the children. And that is our biggest asset. That was her mantra from day one. And I do believe that is our biggest asset. And this is another reason why I'm bringing this forward. So here I go, and it's only one page, but anyway, I'll do it real quick. For many years, local governments have been advocating for direct and specific action to support the increasing number of people who are negatively impacted by the toxic drug crisis. Recently, an alarming number of young people are being affected, and this requires a targeted and tailored approach. We all agree this is a crisis, and we all agree we need to develop a plan to address it, but yet nothing seems to be effective. The challenges seem to be worsening despite the money being spent. As local government leaders, we need accountability, and we need to understand what is being done and what is working or not. I believe we need a specialized recruitment effort to identify people with the passion and drive and appropriate skills to actually make a difference for youth before it's too late. Early intervention and recovery programs provide the best long-term benefit for society as we can remove people from an addiction cycle before permanent damaging effects occur. Now, this first motion, and that's just a preamble. The first motion is to do with the young people, the 18 to 28 group, and this is what is being hit. And there's been a lot of background for the earlier stages of youth, younger families, and it's been great. But this is a lost group of people. They're marginalized. So this I want to have to go to the provincial government for the AVICC. So the idea here is to have more trained mental health supporters. They're just not out there. They're not trained. There's not enough of them. And so if we get more attracted to the field of mental health and addiction, we will have the people, professionals that'll be able to help these young people and separate them, because I tell you, there's many different kinds of mental illness, and for one size fits all does not work. And so that is what this motion is about. So I would like to ask for the support for this for AVICC so I can put it across and it can go from there to UBCM.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Yes.
Could I have a mover and seconder for this motion? I'll
Yes.
probably ask
Thank you.
for you to move by
Move it,
Councillor Martin,
yes.
seconded by Councillor Gore. Any further discussion? Thank you for your
Any
preamble.
questions? Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would also like to thank Councillor Martin for bringing this forward, and also the excellent preamble to set that context. When I first read this, I did look back into resolutions, both from AVICC and for the past couple of years. And I'm sure, as you know full well, there are a number of resolutions that touch on this topic. However, they do not necessarily go into the needs for an approach perhaps and treatment that might look different for the younger group of vulnerable. And I think it is an important distinction. I'm actually somewhat encouraged or cautiously optimistic that the mental health and addictions, which was previously completely separate from the Ministry of Health, is now in with the Ministry of Health. You've got the word in here, root causes, and there can be many causes, and to actually look at that individual and that group. And coming from a background in education, I know that it has been well documented that our brains are continuing to develop, up to and including sort of the age of 25 and around that and beyond. And so that's one of the reasons that it's posited that young people, are bigger risk takers and, not always thinking about consequences and so on. So I appreciate the distinction and the extra focus here on youth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Martin, for bringing these forward. I had a good conversation about this motion with Councillor Beal, and I truly respect your opinion on this, being an educator with your background and everything. So thank you for your input. Yeah. Bringing it back to the youth, Mayor, and I think that's the reason I support this as well. Like, we see a lot of mental health issues and drug addictions on our streets. We are not unique in that sense. It's even more, well, any overdose or any mental health crisis that we see, irrespective of age, is really sad. But it's even more as a parent to see younger folks being affected. And now we are seeing more and more younger folks disproportionately being affected by the toxic drug supply, and it's really sad, and it's horrifying for myself as well. I see on our streets some young kids, which are younger than 18 actually, that this motion talks about, being affected by this crisis. So I hope, I don't know what impact this will have, but if that 18 can be lowered even, because we are seeing kids young as 13, 12 being into addictions, and just a total collapse of the system when it comes to the mental health crises. So I really support a focus on the youth. They are the future of our communities, of our country. So I just want to thank and use this opportunity to it's really emotional to see our young kids who should be in schools, who should be thinking about their future, their careers, being out on the streets. So yeah, I would really like to support this, and hopefully we get attention from the province with focus on some youth programs that we can help our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grens, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. Thank you, Councillor Martin, for bringing this forward. And I appreciate as maybe has been mentioned, the age focus of this. Further to Councillor Beal's comments around brain development, I think as a society, we're seeing adolescence go later into life than it used to. And I don't think our institutions have really kept up with that fact. People are getting married later, they're moving into their own homes later, and our society's become more complex. And it seems like once you graduate high school, a lot of people are pretty much cut loose, and there's, how are you supposed to make your way in the world? It's really, really tough. And I've seen that in my own circles. But also anecdotally, recently I saw that there were some youth in our community who were struggling for the very kind of resource that this motion addresses. And I really had no one to call for that. It's not a police, even though there was police involvement in that, it's not really a police issue. And so bringing attention to the need for a way to address those folks that are falling through the cracks when there is an opportunity for them to make a very good go in their life at that point in their life, depending on which decisions they make at that critical stage. So thank you for bringing this forward.
So we vote on it?
All those, any further discussion?
No.
No? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. Carries unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Martin, back
Yeah,
to you.
thank you. Yeah.
I know you did your preamble as well, but this is
Yeah.
the next motion is from
Yeah.
Councillor Martin
Yeah.
regarding submission of mental health resolution to Association of Vancouver and Coastal Communities annual convention. I don't know if you have a separate preamble that you did for this one.
Well,
And if so, go ahead.
yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It was in this process that when Kiva, we were looking at what was being done, because what we need to have is, we don't want to redo things. We want to be able to use some of the motions that have been through. There was 28 motions from Nanaimo alone since 2005 on this subject, going to UBCM. And this means that there is a lot of thought put into this over the years. And that's why I said in my first motion that something needs to change. And so it's going to cost money for this to, the funding to pay for it, to have healthcare and social services. There's been no increase in provincial funding at all. And this ties into Councillor Wood's costs to do with municipalities. We've had no funding for any of this. So to help this, we want, I can reread the whole thing if you'd like me to, because the RCMP is involved. This is tricky, because we only have so many RCMP and the costs that they incur. So if you want, I'll read the whole thing if you'd like.
I think.
Get the gist of
What
it?
we'll do, we'll get it on the table,
Okay.
Councillor Martin.
Okay.
And then if any council members have any questions or clarification on any particular portion of it, that would be the time.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Sure. Okay, don't move or seconder for the
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Wood. Thank you, Councillor Martin. You've already done the preamble. Is there any questions from council regarding the motion as in your package? Go ahead, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that's better. From my read of this, and I did spend some time going through this to try and fully understand what the intent was. This motion has to do with the social services operators, let's say mental health liaison officers, or whatever they might be called in different municipalities that would go along with the RCMP to assist. So it's regarding that. But my understanding is that the request is actually for a response from the Premier and Minister of Health as to what actions have been implemented in this regard. Is that correct? Because that's
Yes.
what I understand to be the actual motion and the request.
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
because,
Councillor Martin, go ahead.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, because we saw all these motions from Nanaimo, 28 of them, and maybe they have been. A lot of them have been. Maybe they haven't. We want it researched, because this is the challenge. We bring things to UBCM, and then where does it go from there? And this is what is frustrating. And so we don't want to waste the time doing all this if it's already been done. Separating the ones that have been done to the ones that need to be done. And then things will be, hopefully, go through for the future, Yeah.
Follow up, go ahead, Councillor Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that understanding in mind, I guess I am actually wondering if it's not possible for council to write a letter directly to the Minister of Health to get this information. Like, I'm not actually sure that a request for a report or a response is something that we'd want to take to AVICC and then go on to UBCM if in fact there perhaps are, like, what is the mechanism for getting responses to requests from UBCM? I mean, perhaps on the Compass, or on the UBCM website, there might be something. The other place, I suppose, if UBCM has gotten responses and information about this topic, perhaps we could also send a call, either CC UBCM to find out, get an update, province-wide, what municipalities are actually getting these services, who's funding it, and what are the results. So I'm not sure what others think about that, but I can't help but think that it might be quicker, actually, and more efficient to send a request from our council to actually get the information. And then once we have the information, perhaps from there, take something a step further.
Yeah. And thank you for that, Councillor Beal. And I have to admit that I am in 100% agreement with you on this. I had suggested to Councillor Martin that she direct actually a letter to our new Minister of Health, Minister Osborne as well. I think is to be in a more effective to ask for a report as to what it has, because I'm not sure that we just want to be number 29 of the same resolution. And it's just like, you just keep on answering the same question. You think you're going to get a different answer. I'm not sure that has been very effective, but I think more the direct approach would be more appropriate at this particular time, because it's been presented so many times. I have this feeling it's just it's going to make that pile of the ignored file even larger. But at the same time, when we do have our meetings with the ministers and so forth, that is when we do get responses from it. And I give credit to the provincial government. We do actually get responses. They do follow up. And I think that would be a more effective means of doing it, rather than just another resolution at ABICC. That's my own personal comments. I've been around a while. I've been to a lot of those conferences, and I've attended a lot of those resolution sessions, and and even to be endorsed by the AVICC board, I'm not sure that would happen. They say it. So I'm thinking, for if you really want to get a response, which you're entitled to, absolutely. I think a direct approach would be better. That's just my feeling. Go ahead, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it would be more efficient if we wrote a letter from Mayor and Council to the Minister. We'd probably get an answer back quicker. And then to the other point about the provincial responses to resolutions, I've just emailed a link to Mayor and Council, and UBCM does post provincial responses to resolutions each year. And so the link that I've sent out has the 2023 provincial responses. And, on a lot of them, the province says, here's what we're already doing on this issue. And some of them we don't hear back from the province. And some of them say, we're going to take this we might take this to the next level. And it's a bit more encouraging than some of their other responses. But UBCM does post the provincial responses it gets from all supported resolutions from the convention. And so I've sent a link out. The 2024 responses from the province aren't posted yet. The province has been pretty busy juggling a bunch of other things, and even more so today. But I just want to mention that the UBCM does post those responses from the province, and they do get back to UBCM. Thank you.
Okay.
Any further comments, Councillor Martin?
I'm supportive of the idea. The letter should be sent instead. And then it would give us another year. If we don't get any satisfaction, we have next year to I'll watch for it for sure.
Right. Okay. So,
see what they say about what this motion says.
So I will then ask Councillor Beal if you want to, to the motion on the floor. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just actually do want to thank Councillor Martin for bringing this topic forward. It's no surprise to anyone here around this table that our local detachment of the RCMP, when they're going out on calls, that a large percentage of these calls are for interactions with people who are suffering from mental health issues and so on. We've certainly, I'm sure that each of us have read about successful programs that, whether it be in the Greater Victoria area or on the Lower Mainland, where there is someone who rides along with the RCMP, but who has training or a background, whether they be in public health or what their background is, to assist, and that we read about really positive results. So having this information, if we can get the information about what is going on where, who's funding it, will give us some information that will hopefully help us to make some decisions about what we can do to assist our own RCMP so that there are better positive outcomes. So I thank you for bringing it forward, but I won't support this as it is for going forward to AVICC, but I would absolutely like to see Mayor and Council send a letter to get this information.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the question. All those. The mover has been seconded, so we'll call the question if we're going to support it, and then it'll take the next step from that. All those in favor of the motion?
No.
On the floor. Okay, all those opposed? Okay, that does not carry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have done the opposed again. Sorry, all those opposed? That is opposed by Councillor Gore, Councillor Grenz, Councillor Beal, Mayor O'Brien. Did I say Councillor Martin?
Yeah, well,
Thank
yes,
you.
because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
idea of then having a
Yes.
letter would make sense. So
Yes, that's right.
that's why I'm opposing it,
Yes,
even though I
thank-
did make it.
Okay,
Does
that's
that make
fine.
sense?
Yeah, it's wrong. So that does not carry.
No, it doesn't carry.
That's fine. And then, so moving forward, Councillor Martin, I would suggest then that you would work with our CAO anyways to do a separate item
So
of a
take it to
letter
her.
of basically what you were trying to get the
Yeah.
information for.
Sure,
Thank you.
it's no problem. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just a point of clarification. So would there be a subsequent motion now to have that letter from
No.
mayor and council?
No, we just defeated the notice of motion here.
Yeah.
To take it to AVICC.
Yeah.
We defeated it. That'll be up to Councillor Martin to pull that through now.
And I will,
Yeah, thank you.
of course. Thank you.
Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps I should have stated it publicly, but I do have a notice of motion, and it wasn't added at the agenda at the beginning, but I wonder if I could bring that forth. Well, we have another one first of all.
Yes, yeah.
All right, just don't forget me. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I know. That's why I
Thank-
asked you.
thank you.
You would have been first, but you said no. Thank you. Council, as per the amendments that I made right at the very start of the meeting to the agenda, we have a new notice of motion that I am requesting that we hear today. It's been put together in response to the Canadian goods and services in response to the US tariff situation that's been brought forth. So you all have it in front of you. Councillor Wood very kindly crafted this together in his most efficient way as usual. And I am most appreciative of it. And I would like to we have time, and Councillor Wood, if you would like to read out the resolution for the city of Parksville at this time. And
Thank you, Mayor. As this is a developing story, the first whereas is incorrect already because apparently we have a 30-day pause on the tariffs.
oh, just like Mexico?
Just like
He did
Mexico.
Mexico this morning.
So I think our newly elected president south of us just wants to keep us jumping on pins and needles. So the first whereas says the United States government has imposed tariffs. So I'm not sure where, if you'd like to maybe keep this on the back burner for now for the next 30 days, or we kind of wordsmith it a little bit. I'll proceed as you'd like. Thank you.
Well, and that is interesting news because I heard literally on the way to the council meeting this afternoon that Mexico has been exempted to this suggestion by the president of the USA to give them a 30-day reprieve. We also had the news that they had discussion with Prime Minister Trudeau as well. But they didn't give us any comments about that at that particular time. So that is why we decided to jump in this. And the other reason why we felt is of urgency today is because already on the weekend, MP Gord Johns already contacted me on Saturday night to ask my availability to convene a meeting on Tuesday or Wednesday, as quick as he could get it going, for us to have a united approach against the tariffs and how we would do it. And they were suggesting that the municipalities have a very real responsibility here to show united on a nonpartisan way to support the basically Buy Canadian. And as a result, we crafted this morning anyways to bring it up. I think if you are in agreement, because I've asked her to come to the table today, I think we could put it on hold. Yeah, Councillor Fraz, go ahead, your comments.
Yeah, one thing I think it's
Maybe
important.
you've got more news too is happening by the second here.
For
So go
sure.
ahead,
There's
please.
something to consider though too, is while you're talking about putting this on hold, this isn't talking about taking any action against anybody. So I don't think it's retaliatory. To me, this is talking about reducing our vulnerabilities. So when things like this can happen to us, we're not as exposed. I don't see why we put that on hold. I think that's what we should have been doing for years. And so this is more of a wake up call saying, hey, look how vulnerable we are. Maybe we should strengthen ourselves and put ourselves in a better position. I think this resolution should be coming forward, sooner than later. I don't think we should wait. I think in fact, it's a wake up call that we should have been doing this kind of thing sooner. So I would be supportive of taking this motion now. And in fact, putting all these things in order, regardless of what happens with any tariff war.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I feel the same because I what's to stop in 30 days of just saying, well, if I reduce the tariffs by another, it's just a game. It's gamemanship to this individual, what he's doing, right? I thank you for your comments. I am totally in favor of that as well. As we wordsmith it and so forth, I think we should be on record anyways. And in the meantime, while they give us a 30-day reprieve, Canadians and our community will hopefully support what is suggested in this is about, as you said, what we should be doing already. We should be buying Canadian and we should be watching those labels all along. But in the same time, I think that we can put that in place even while there's a 30-day reprieve in place. I totally agree with that. So, Councillor Wood, if we could ask for maybe an amendment to can you work on that?
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, to be fair, the executive order was signed. We have a 30-day reprieve. The other thing to be fair about is I don't think we're violating any free trade agreements that have been signed by the two countries. Our resolution is that the City of Parksville encourage residents, businesses, and municipal departments to prioritize the purchase of Canadian-made goods and services wherever feasible and whenever feasible. And to Councillor Fraz's point, that's not a bad course of action regardless of what is happening between two countries. The second resolution is that the City of Parksville commit to prioritizing Canadian-made goods and services in municipal procurement and contracts, provided they meet financial and operational requirements, which allows our city staff some maneuvering, depending on what they're trying to procure there. And then the third resolution is that the City of Parksville engage with local business organizations, including Parksville District Chamber of Commerce, to promote initiatives supporting Canadian businesses and local employment. So these are all good ideas regardless of the timing. And so I don't think, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that there's any problem in passing it today regardless. And I actually don't like the idea of always being on pins and needles. And, the executive order was signed south of Canada. And I would rather see us just go ahead anyways and not put it on the back shelf because we don't know what the future is. And I think this is a more sustainable, it's a more sustainable future. It's less vulnerable. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so the very first line I just doctored quickly, whereas the United States government is proposing imposed tariffs on Canadian imports, including a 25% tariff on Canadian goods entering the US, except for energy resources, which face a 10% tariff. Full stop. Okay, thank you. Okay, and I agree. And then I think that's the only one that we have to change because I want this to go on record. So Councillor Grens and then Councillor Gar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. So I think we're talking about two different goals here. So if the goal is to protect ourselves from tariffs in the future, that is a different goal than if it is to respond to a threat it's a reactionary thing. So, and making a statement. So if we're looking to make a statement in response to a threat of tariffs, that is, in my mind, a bit separate than if we want to sort of insulate ourselves from this happening in the future, because the second of those things does actually have a real cost to it, which is that we may actually have to pay more for things then, right? We're not necessarily going to create some industry because we put this in on our, we're not all of a sudden going to be able to refine oil or anything at the municipal level. So I think if we pass this, it should be done to make a statement that we are in solidarity with all the municipalities and all the levels of government across Canada in responding, and that we're unified as, Canadians against this threat. And that should be what we're dealing with, separate from anything around insulating ourselves in the future and all that, which all valid to be discussed, but a different issue.
Right. And to your point anyways about regarding, increased costs and so forth and the be it further resolved section, provided they meet financial and operational requirements. So if we have a budget for a very specific piece of equipment for the water treatment plant that is only made in the US of A, then we will continue that purchase so we can keep our water treatment plant operational. So that would be it. But if there are alternates that are available type of thing, then we're just saying that maybe they should be looked at. Thank you. Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. Should it be moved and seconded before we debate, or?
Well, I just would like to doctor it as we need. If we need to
I'm
do
not
some
here to
wordsmithing
doctor it.
on it.
No, I have questions.
You have questions on? Oh, okay. So. Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, we haven't passed it yet. Yes, and then we can. So that's what we'll do. Okay. Okay. Right. So all those in favor of hearing the motion on the floor? That is unanimous. Thank you. So now we can discuss it. Now, could I have a mover and a seconder for the motion? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Mayor O'Brien. And now it's on the floor for any questions or possible wordsmithing or questions. Go ahead, Councillor Gore.
Oh yeah, because there's notice of motion, no? That's why. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mayor. So through you, I have a question for our staff. So it talks about buying local, Canadian made. I just want to get some information. Does our current procurement policy not already do that? I'm just curious.
CAO Kaler, if you could address that, please.
Hello, thank you, through you. So we have some requirements that I would say limit us just choosing Canadian or local. And those are quite a few of them. There's best practices around value for taxpayer money. And then there's also trade agreements and provincial requirements because we are a level of government. So I have not had a chance to research the full implications of this. And our CFO is just away for the next couple of weeks. So I can't really comment on what this would mean, sort of to Councillor Grenz's point about the actual costs of making changes to our purchasing. I just can't comment on that right now. I have not had a chance to look at that, but I think as the mayor touched on, there are some things that we do not make locally. Fire department supplies I know are quite often from a sole source right now that we've had approval from council over the years to do that. So yeah, I mean, really right now we have like free bidding. So certain costs we have to post on BC Bid. Someone from anywhere could quote on that. And then we have evaluation matrices that apply to each decision. So we can't say that we will prioritize a Canadian product the way our current, any municipality can't, right? We have to follow a whole bunch of different things around purchasing at the moment. So yeah, I mean, we certainly try. Like, there's a lot of things that local suppliers can actually win out on because they're obviously able to provide customer service quicker to us. They can show up on site when needed. So we always look for those ways to, keep in mind the value for the taxpayer and not buy something more expensive from a local person. Yeah, so there's a lot of different things at play, and it's one of the biggest areas of liability for cities is in purchasing. So we have to be very cautious moving forward. But I think the way, if I maybe just weigh in the way the motion is worded, I don't see any immediate liability for us on that side.
Thank you, CIO. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay. Any further questions? All those in favor? That carries, it carries unanimous. Thank you very much. And we will have this published as in the minutes. And so thank you for your acceptance of a very current and evolving situation that's going to affect a lot of people in our community and in all of Canada. So thank you. We have under notices of motion, and Councillor Beal is going to propose a notice of motion that she doesn't want to be heard today, that she wants to have it carried to the next meeting. And so go ahead, Councillor Beal, your notice of motion for the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is not, it's not earth shattering or anything. So a notice of motion is adequate. Here's my notice of motion that council agendas be prepared for council meetings at least 7 working days ahead of the meeting with allowance for late additions. Further, that any late additions be added no less than 3 working days ahead of the meeting. And given that, I will just say that given that it is a notice of motion, if anyone wishes to, ask me a little bit more about this, when I do bring it forward, I will have a little bit of a background piece. And also between now and then, I do intend to meet with our CAO to get any additional insights that she can provide. Thank you.
Thank you. For liaison reports, we have Councillor Beal reporting this afternoon for the Oceanside Community Arts Council, and maybe more if she so sees fit. Go ahead.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. And the Arts Council is such a busy group. There are so many things going on, both at the actual, the Macmillan Arts Center, but also around the community. I have decided just to focus on a couple of them, I guess 4 to share. So first of all, coming up at Family Day, well, actually it's quite exciting. The Oceanside Community Arts Council and the MAC in particular is partnering with the RDN for to provide some opportunities and special events. So Family Day, which is coming up quite soon, there's Under the Ocean Art Commotion at the MAC. And there are a number of activities, all free events, drop in between 9:30 and 12 p.m. I think that clearly this would be a focus for children but families. Paper art fish, ocean art pieces, communal face painting, and more. So that's coming up soon. Again, partnering with the RDN, there will be a program of youth arts for the 10 to 15-year-olds. And that includes that one's passed actually, animal drawing and grid drawing. And both of those you can register through the RDN for these activities. Also, as many and all of you know, there is a MAC community garden right adjacent to the MAC, and a lot of activities take place there. And there is a workshop on various aspects of gardening starting February 7th, right through to the April 12th. And this is with the PQB Fruit organization, but one can also check with the MAC to learn about that. And I think the online for details, and I don't know more about how long they take. And finally, last but not least, switching to the other end of demographics locally, we have Aging Artfully. And it's a free program offered to independently domiciled seniors living in our community. But here's the rub. Whereas many local businesses offer discounts for seniors on certain days of the week, it's often 55 plus. I'm afraid in order to access these programs, seniors are defined as 75 plus, because there really is quite a demand. And this is an age group that might not be out playing pickleball or doing some other activities, but certainly ready to get out and create at the MAC. So it's a free program Thursday starting March 6th. And again, one can contact the MAC to get more information. It's an amazing program. Thank you very much.
Adam, you just slid under. You're good. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Beal. Any other liaison reports at this time? Seeing none, thank you. Subject to pursuant to section 91E of the Community Charter, council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. Can I have a mover and seconder to move into closed? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Gore. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you.